You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Good morning and welcome to Focus on the Liturgy here on WNDZ 750 AM, streaming on YouTube and on Facebook. Happy Ash Wednesday. We are here every fourth Wednesday of the month, and it happens to fall on the beginning of the great season of Lent. I'm Todd Williamson from the Office for Divine Worship with the Archdiocese of Chicago.
And I'm Danielle Noe from Liturgy Training Publications, also with the Archdiocese.
And I'm Timothy Johnston at St. Thomas the Apostle and editorial consultant at LTP.
Timothy and Danielle, happy Ash Wednesday.
Happy Ash Wednesday.
We start, and I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. But
I know you are.
we start this great season of Lent. We start this great initial 40-day journey, but that we all know that's part of a larger 90-day journey from death to life, from sin to freedom from sin, from the ashes in that piece of music we heard at the opening of the show. We journey from ashes to the living font. All of it in the context of the community of faith that enters a time of retreat, for these 6 weeks.
Yeah, Lent is definitely what we would call a retreat for the church. It is a time for deep and intense spiritual reflection, inner conversion, active conversion in the world, where we commit ourselves to those three disciplines of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. But the purpose behind those disciplines is to lead us to the font, to lead us to renew our baptism at Easter and our commitment to all of those responsibilities that flow from that baptism.
Exactly. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, because I don't think many Catholics see Lent as that focus. But Timothy, what's your favorite part of this season? It's one of the high seasons of the whole liturgical year.
Well, yeah, that's a tough question. Yeah, I think, what I'll say, maybe I'll say this, because it's not necessarily the favorite part, but it is, I have grown over the years to appreciate the season in a way that I certainly did not as a kid. As I've come to know more about what the season is, has become easier to enter into the scriptures of the season, the sense of not just the woe is me, but the sense of that being attentive to God's presence leading to the font. I do feel much more called, though I'm not always great at it, to this call to conversion or reflecting on those pieces of our lives. I mean, one of my favorite pieces, if your parish has members of the elect who will be baptized, they'll become elect on the first Sunday of Advent. So those in preparation in the catechumenate, the RCIA process, if they become elect and they're going to be initiated on the vigil, the scrutinies really are really part of my favorite part of the season.
Yeah,
where the parish is gathering around those, and we We celebrate those rites with those in preparation. They're intense rites. And this year we're in cycle A, so it's natural that we would hear those readings, but we'll probably get to some of that
We
later too,
will.
but those are my favorite parts.
Yeah, we definitely will. But let's go back to the beginning, because you said you appreciate the season much more than you did when you were a child. And I think I know what you meant by that. But go back to the very beginning of the show. We greeted each other with Happy Lent. Do you think most Catholics think of Lent as a happy season? Why not? Danielle,
No,
you're shaking your head.
definitely
Why
not.
not?
Well, it's that time where we have to give up stuff, and it's all about sacrifice and going to confession, and what's happy about that, right? So, but I mean, I personally, I think one of my favorite parts about Lent is connecting to God's mercy, God's love, right? And that's what makes it joyful. That I've been writing a presentation that I'm giving on Monday about Catholic social teaching, and kind of starting at creation and how then the fall of man and sin enters into this world, and kind of touching on how in Lent we hear about how God is always welcoming us back throughout the Old Testament, always giving us these opportunities to come back to me, return to the Lord with all your heart. God's always there. God's always present. God's always initiating an invitation, initiating this encounter. And
our God is a
Lent
God of
is
second chances.
multiple chances upon chances, right? And all of the fulfillment of that beckoning, of that invitation in Christ, and that Lent calls us into that encounter, to remember why we were brought into this mystery, into this church, into this world, to become more and more like Jesus as we live our lives. And we sin. That's the reality.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. Only Jesus was perfect, and we always need that time to have conversion, to come back to God. And this is God's invitation to do that, to realize that, yes, he's always there when I fall. He's going to pick me up and give me that strength and give me his mercy. And we just need to be open to that grace.
Timothy, you what about you? Was that along the lines of when you said that you appreciate it differently than you did when you were younger? Well, you guys both know how much I love Walter Burkhart's great line. Most of us go into Lent kicking and screaming.
Yeah. I think certainly as a younger kid, it had primarily to do with what now I would say is a misunderstanding of fasting and abstinence. It was just, oh my gosh, I have to give up my favorite food. And that's sort of what Lent was contextualized as, both in school and at home. I think I've shared before on the show that, I did not learn until I went to college that abstinence, fasting, I did not really learn the rules until I got to college, basically, because they were very strict in my home. And, we couldn't eat between meals all of Lent. We only could eat one big meal a day, all of Lent. And it wasn't until college I was like, oh, it's only Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. So there was one of these things, like, it was a little more intense growing up than I would have liked. But yeah, I don't think as a kid that was something. Actually, Todd, as you asked that, I was thinking yesterday, because we're doing some planning in the parish, of course, for the rest of the season and looking to Easter. Obviously, we're in that kind of mode. And I was pulling out some old hymn text or songs that I grew up with. And it sort of brought me back to some of those memories of the Lenten season at my school. And as I sat with those, I did appreciate the formation that happened, even if I didn't know it then. It certainly had an impact, because it's still resonating today. And so while I may not have liked it in the moment, that was part of the experience I needed in order to grow to where I'm at now. And certainly music and the scriptures were part of that experience for me, creating the environment.
Yeah. Most Catholics, when you say Happy Lent, again, it's what do you mean? There's no happiness during Lent. There's no laughing during Lent. Lent is supposed to be somber and serious and painful, and and we forget that the previous translation of the Mass texts, the preface for Lent said, "Father, each year you give us this joyful season of Lent."
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
I miss that
I
text.
know, I do too. But I think just in this first segment to introduce to our listeners that the church has never said that Lent is to be a painful, miserable, put yourself through awful situation. Lent is all about renewal. It is a joyful season because it offers us what you talked about, Danielle. God offers us what you talked about, Danielle, his great mercy and always calling us back. And before we celebrate the Paschal Eucharist, we have that opportunity throughout this season, through the Triduum to the Holy Saturday or Easter Sunday celebration, to do just that, to return, to remember who we are, to remember who we've been baptized to be, right, and to respond to his call.
It's a time for deep reflection that I always feel connected to as an introverted personality. What runs through my mind during this time is always be still and know that I am God.
Yes.
This, empty yourself out of everything that keeps you from receiving God fully, from living his love fully.
Do what Jesus
that's really
did.
the context for fasting. That's the context of why we give up stuff. And reframing, Timothy, you talked about how it was so strict in your home and you associated it with giving up your favorite food and everything, and that's not a bad thing to do, but how we catechize and inform people in that is really, it's such a missed opportunity of, well, why do we do that? What are we giving up that we're taking part in all of the time in overabundance, and thinking about those who might have to do without, and being in solidarity with those people who don't have a regular meal, right? Fasting doesn't have to be food, of what is distracting us from in our life from being able to deepen our relationship with God, and even deepen our relationship with people in your own relationships. Am I on my phone all the time to the point where I'm not listening to my husband who's trying to talk to me, because God is present in those relationships, right? So how are we refocusing on God?
You had a great way of looking at it here as we get ready to go into a break. But Danielle, you said emptying yourself. Well, that's in imitation of Christ, right? The great Philippian hymn, though he was in the form of God, he emptied himself and took the form of a slave. So that is the purpose of Lent. That's the purpose of everything that we do during Lent and how we observe Lent, to shape us more and more and more back into the image of Christ that we were baptized to be. And that and as we said, it reaches its culmination at Easter, and that's where we can pick it up when we come back from this first break. Stay with us. We're breaking open the great season of Lent on this Ash Wednesday. We'll be back after these messages.
Change our hearts this time. Your word says it can be. Change our minds this time. Your life could make us free. We are the people your call set apart, Lord, this time. Change our heart. Brought by your hand to the edge of our dreams, one foot in paradise, one in the waves.
Caring adults make all the difference in the lives of adolescents. Catholic Charities understands this, and our mentorship programs provide a free opportunity for young adults to spend time with volunteers who genuinely care about them. This program is ideal for youth aged 9 through 12 who may need support navigating the challenges of childhood and early adolescence. Our amazing volunteers serve as friends who help youth recognize their strengths and empower them to reach their full potential. Catholic Charities conducts a thorough background check on every volunteer, and our program coordinator closely monitors and supports every relationship. Mentoring is a fun after-school program that can help young adults build confidence and enjoy fun activities with their peers, too. To learn more, visit CatholicCharities.net or call 312-655-7970 in Cook County and 847-782-4224 in Lake County. We're connecting youth with great role models. Join us today.
This is year 44 for me teaching. When I started here, there were teachers here that had taught me when I was a student. Now I'm the old person. Right now, I teach junior high math. I love when kids find what I'm teaching to be fun and they get it. I see that light bulb go off and it's a thrill. People are always amazed. What? You're here for 44 years? It's hard for me to believe, frankly. I love what I do. Every summer I think, oh, I miss the classroom. Even on the weekends, I think I can't wait to get back on Monday and teach those quadratic equations.
Shape the next generation of leaders. Teach. Apply today at archchicago.org/schooljobs.
For more than 20 years, Catholic Charities Adult Protective Services has been advocating for seniors who are the victims of abuse, neglect, confinement, or financial exploitation. With our partners at local, city, and state agencies, our trained case managers follow through on every concern that is brought to our attention in a cooperative way to ensure that our seniors are safe and protected. According to the Illinois Department on Aging, last year nearly 21,000 cases of elder abuse were reported in Illinois. Of these, only 5% were reported by seniors themselves. So raising awareness is an important part of this issue. If you are concerned about a senior you know, call 800-252-8966. That's 800-252-8966. With your help, we can stop elder abuse and look out for the seniors in our lives.
Welcome back to Focus on the Liturgy on this Ash Wednesday. Happy Lent to everyone who is listening. We broke there, Danielle and Timothy, talking about just a general overview of the season. That's what we're talking about here, and made note that it is a season of renewal, and that's reflected in the texts themselves, aren't they, Danielle?
Yeah, very much so. For example, the prayer after communion, which we'll hear this coming Sunday. So listen to some of the themes that we've been talking about that are present in this prayer. Renewed now with heavenly bread, by which faith is nourished, hope increased, and charity strengthened. We pray, O Lord, that we may learn to hunger for Christ, the true and living bread, and strive to live by every word which proceeds from your mouth through Christ our Lord. So the
goodness.
Eucharist renewing us, right? Strengthening us, strengthening our faith, strengthening our charity. So all of these aspects of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving that, we're fasting, we're hungering for God, so let God fill us.
Yeah, nourish us, fill us, nourish us,
Mhm.
feed us, all of that. The season itself, again, just as we're getting started here, one of the unlike Christmas, it doesn't change in its length from year to year. It's determined by Easter, which of course is different each year. But for example, the length of the season of Lent doesn't change, right? It is always a determined number of Sundays, and that is, Timothy, what?
Yeah, it is determined. So we have make sure I say this right, the 5 Sundays and then Palm Sunday, which leads into Holy Week, of course. And so Holy Week is that final week of the Lenten season, which ends with the beginning of the Mass of the Lord's Supper, really, because that's the beginning of the season of Triduum. And so we have Ash Wednesday until...
What? Holy Thursday's not part of Lent? Good Friday's not part of Lent?
No, it's its own thing. It's its own season. But no, you're right. Like, how many people, it sort of all gets clumped together. And we forget the solemnity of that season. So that 3-day season, if you will, is the pinnacle of our whole church year, with, of course, the Easter Vigil being the crux of that.
Right.
But yeah, Lent is from, we look at Ash Wednesday until that Thursday of Holy Week, and you roughly get more than 40 days if you actually count the calendar days, right? I don't remember exactly, maybe you said, but how many days we actually get. But the number 40 really comes if you remove the days after Ash Wednesday and start with the first Sunday of Lent.
Right.
And if you look at the Roman Missal, you'll even notice it says Thursday after Ash Wednesday, Friday after Ash Wednesday. But then we get to that first Sunday of Lent.
And that's what it's called. The first Sunday of Lent.
Yeah. So the number 40 that we get is not what's technically on the calendar, but it is scriptural. We get 40 days in the desert with Christ, right? He goes into the desert before his ministry to prepare, to pray, to meditate, to be nurtured by God the Father, and be tempted in that sense. And we hear that scripture. The 40 years wandering in the desert, the Israelites, as they wandered, again, sort of this image of pilgrimage, this image of journey, trying to discover who we are. And that's the journey we're on. So there are more than 40 days, but we use that image the way that we count, because it helps remind us where we've come from.
Right.
And the journey, this desert journey, if you will, that we're on, of discovering who we are and who we are in God's presence and who God has called us to be.
You make a great point. I don't think Lent makes, in many ways, Lent makes no sense apart from Easter. Right. And so we always have to see Lent within the context of the greater cycle, if you will, of the Lent, Triduum, Easter cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Lent seamlessly leads into the Triduum, and the Triduum just flows out into the 50 days of the Easter season.
Right. And historically, if we look back at the development of Lent, it just as you said, Todd, it grew out of the need ultimately for, and this is a simplified way of saying this, the need for a period of preparation for those that were going to be baptized at the vigil. And so it started out not being 5 weeks. It was, I forgot what it originally started out, but it was like 4 weeks. And then eventually it became this longer period over time, recognizing the need for a more intentional preparation, not only for those that were going to be initiated at the Easter Vigil. So we call this period for them the period of purification and enlightenment, which ties into exactly what Danielle was describing at the beginning of the show, that we're uncovering those things and we're coming to celebrate the goodness in our life. And that we also need that as the already baptized. We too need purification, and we need to come to a recommitment, I don't know what the right word is I want to use, but to renew that understanding of our own enlightenment that came in baptism. Maybe that's the way to say it.
That's a great way to say it, because it's been in my mind since, Danielle, you said it at the start of the show in that first segment. So let's go. So we just said Lent makes no sense apart from Easter, and then that just kind of makes me go, okay, well then what's the purpose of Lent? And Timothy, you just ended on a note that Danielle began at the beginning. Danielle, that whole idea, what is Lent leading to? What is the whole purpose of Lent, or what is the one true focus of the season of Lent? You said it earlier, and I think it bears
baptism.
repeating. Yes. Say it again.
And it's renewing the baptism. So if you've already been baptized, whether as an infant or later in life, it's the journey of the baptized to renew their baptismal promises at Easter. And the baptized, in turn, are models for those who have not been baptized, as Timothy said, are in this period of purification and enlightenment, this intense time of self-scrutiny, if you will, of making their final preparations to be baptized at Easter. So all of Lent is moving us forward on this pilgrimage, the unbaptized and the baptized together, of journeying to the font. So whether it be to receive it or to renew it.
So that gives such a clear context for the season, and all three of us have done this before. All three of us have given talks or presentations on Lent, and all three of us have asked the people who are there, what is the purpose of Lent? And you get so many different answers, right? It's meant to make me miserable, or it's meant to make me a better person, or it's meant to bring me closer to God, or it's meant to help me lose weight, or whatever. But all of that is only part of the answer. The full answer is the purpose of Lent, and everything we do during Lent, our fasting, our prayer, our almsgiving, the giving up the chocolate. My dad every year gives up pizza. He has done that his whole life. Or some people observe it by doing something extra, right? I will go to Mass every day, or every week I will help out at the soup kitchen in our parish, or every week I will, whatever it is you're doing. For the listeners to keep in mind, the purpose of doing whatever it is you're doing is to prepare you to renew your baptism at Lent. That is profound.
It is very profound, Todd, and I don't want to derail that positive piece, because we need to hold on to that. But as you were talking, that's what I kind of was thinking about. Sunday after Sunday, sitting in the pews, is that what we're reinforcing,
right,
in the ways that we're preaching, the way that we're the musical choices that we are using within our parish community? Because I wonder, kind of going back to my own childhood, that was never told to me, right? And so how many of us listening was that never told? And so I don't even have a good sense of my own baptismal dignity, if you will. I mean, I'm kind of speaking in the broad sense here, so that if I can grab onto that piece, then Lent takes on a new meaning. If I can reflect on the importance of my own baptism, then I can, that's why these 6 weeks make much more sense now.
Yeah.
That's why I can, but otherwise, so I'm wondering if you're a deacon or priest listening, I want to invite you to maybe this season to consider helping the assembly through the homily, through the ways that we reflect, or musicians. How do you help the assembly move in that direction so that they take on and own the dignity of their baptism?
Oh my gosh, what a great way to observe Lent. Spend these 6 weeks reflecting on the dignity of your baptism. Danielle, you were going to say something.
It makes pastoral sense from what you're talking about, Timothy, with pastors and music ministers, is sitting down together. What am I going to, as a pastor, what am I going to preach about this weekend? How are the musical selections then going to highlight what's in the homily, to reinforce that idea of journey and renewal of baptism and journeying to that font. What the music that you're hearing today throughout the show has been really intentionally chosen in that, well, it is some of my favorite music, but a lot of it is, if you listen to the lyrics, it's all about conversion.
Yeah.
It's all about renewal. We're going to hear soon, Jerusalem, My Destiny. That doing that song in the beginning of the Lenten season, that we're a pilgrim church journeying to the font, and the baptized are in solidarity with the unbaptized. We are called to pray for them, to support them, to be a witness to them,
to be an
and
example.
that's all through our own reflection on what it means to be baptized.
Yeah, what it means to live the Christian way of life. Because that's what they're, and just for the listeners before this next break, we've been talking about people in the RCIA. That's the process whereby the adults in your community who are unbaptized are being prepared for baptism at Easter. And this is their final period of preparation, and as it is for us. Timothy and Danielle, let's pick it up there when we come back. Stay with us. We're talking about this great season of Lent, which we begin on this Ash Wednesday. We'll be back after these messages.
Community is core to Catholic Charity's founding mission. For more than 100 years, we have met people and families where they are, serving anyone in need, regardless of their faith, gender, race, or ethnicity. As our world absorbs the economic, political, and social aftershocks of the pandemic, 50% or more of the 6 million people living in Cook and Lake counties have little or no savings. They are a paycheck away from zero. We are deeply grateful to everyone in the Catholic Charities community who partners with us to alleviate the suffering of the people we serve and offer them a better path forward. We are witnessing a message of mercy and hope to a world very much in need. Learn more at CatholicCharities.net.
I am a seminarian.
The Church needs compassionate and well-trained priests to help guide each of us through life.
What inspires me, what draws me always to the priesthood is continue to see priests be a beacon of hope for other people.
You can play a part in the education of these young men as they prepare for a life of service to others.
I want to be that beacon of hope too, and it sets my heart on fire.
To support our seminarians, make your gift at archchicago.org/seminarian fund or call 312-534-7959.
The cemetery ministry is a core ministry of our Catholic faith tied to the corporal works of mercy. It's comforting to know that our Catholic cemeteries are caring for the remains of our loved ones awaiting the resurrection. There are 44 Archdiocese of Chicago Catholic cemeteries willing to help you in your time of loss. Call 708-449-6100 or visit CatholicCemeteriesChicago.org. Catholic Cemeteries, serving the Catholic community since 1837.
You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Thanks for letting us be part of your morning. Now again, Catholic Chicago.
Oh my goodness, the quintessential Lenten psalm, that setting of Psalm 51. Create a clean heart, O God, in me. Welcome to the second half hour of Focus on the Liturgy. If you are just joining us, I'm Todd Williamson from the Office for Divine Worship.
And I'm Danielle Noe from LTP.
And I'm Timothy Johnston from St. Thomas the Apostle.
And we are breaking open the great season of Lent, which begins today on this Ash Wednesday. The whole first half hour of the show, guys, we were talking just about situating Lent and the purpose of Lent, an overview of Lent. And we had said that, Danielle, both you and Timothy said it so well. The purpose of the season is to prepare us to renew our baptism at Easter. And for those who are journeying in the process of initiation, it's to prepare them for their reception of baptism. But it's all baptismal focused. And we do that through prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. And we do that by giving things up. And we also do it through penance. And this Ash Wednesday marks this is an important day. Why? What today is the first use of something brand new.
I have in my hand, hot off the presses, the new translation of the Order of Penance. So this, for our listeners, the Order of Penance is, of course, the ritual, the Church's ritual for taking part in the Sacrament of Reconciliation, or the Sacrament of Penance. Was previously called the Rite of Penance, but of course, as these new ritual books are being translated and being more faithful to the Latin, the title is changing to Order, which matches the Latin for order. So it's the order of service as it occurs. Today is the first use of the new translation. So if you haven't already gotten the Order of Penance, you should have those in your parish for use. There aren't, to be honest with you, the changes aren't that significant. It's a lot of matching. It is a translation of the first edition in Latin. So it's a retranslation of what you've already been using. The syntax, of course, matches the Latin more faithfully. It does include the newer translation of the Grail Psalter that the Monks of Conception Abbey has done. So as new translations of ritual books are being done, and ultimately the lectionary for Mass, which is 5 or more years out, the Grail Psalter will be incorporated in that. What pastors, confessors should know specifically is that there are a few changes with the prayer of absolution. I believe there is an image that our producers have, a screenshot of the interior spread of the book with the prayer of absolution, just so that you can see it on your screen. So just a few changes with that. So I know that that is a prayer that all of you have had memorized. So just taking special care to look at that text for when you're taking part in confession. But of course, it still has the order for individual confession. Form 2 of the rite of the order for reconciling within a communal reconciliation service, which is more commonly done during Advent and Lent, and the form for general absolution, which is done in extreme cases. So there really shouldn't be too many surprises with this new translation. Liturgy Training Publications is one of the 4 publishers. I believe there are 4 publishers doing the ritual edition. So you can see it here with a beautiful gold foil stamping of a Martin Ersbaumer piece. So high quality ritual materials to reflect the dignity of the sacrament.
Just to give a little bit of a context here, just for the listeners, because I can imagine people listening say, wait, what? What? The reconciliation is changing, or there's a change in penance? This started back in the early 20s. There was an initiative to translate again all of the major rituals of the church's sacramental life. And so we had the third edition of the Roman Missal. And our listeners may not even be aware, some of our listeners may not even be aware that there was a revised, that was followed by the Revised Order of celebrating matrimony. There was a Revised Order of confirmation. There was a Revised Order of infant baptism, baptism of children. And now we have the newest one is the Order of Penance. But Timothy, as Danielle said, it's not a new sacrament, or it's not a new celebration of the sacrament, eh?
Yeah, it's not. When you go to celebrate the sacrament, it'll be familiar enough. Like even if you had memorized yourself the words of absolution, which the priest says, that's the only thing you're really going to notice. You're still going to go. But I do think it is an opportunity for the church, for us as individuals, as communities, to maybe renew our understanding of the sacrament, and the gift that the sacrament is to individual, to the community, to the life of the church, especially during the season of Lent, as you are preparing to renew your baptismal promises. I know that it can be a scary sacrament for some to participate in, especially if it's been a while since you've gone. It might be something that it makes you a little anxious. That's okay. It happens to all of us. And the good thing is, and I've, and Todd and Danielle, you probably have heard this from priests over the years as well. Every priest I've ever talked to who celebrates the sacrament, which hopefully is most of them, if not all of them, always talks about what a graced experience it is.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And they understand, because they themselves go to confession. They understand the anxieties, they are part of the human experience in this. So they're there to accompany you, to welcome you, to make you or help you feel comfortable within that. And the other piece to know as we're thinking about this is not just the practicalities of celebrating, but it is about God's grace. We don't just go and tell the priest this. That's not what the sacrament is, right? We go to share, the priest representing not only the person of Christ, but the whole community, so that there's healing that takes place.
Yeah.
That God's mercy can infiltrate, if you will, the sin, the brokenness, the things that divide our relationships, so that we can be made whole again and be more fully incorporated into the life of the community.
It's
right.
Yeah. So, really, another way of, there is no change to the Sacrament of Penance. There is a change to the words.
Words.
Yeah. The translation. Even so, Danielle, I don't, before, Timothy, I don't know if you were part of this, but even before the show, the last couple of days as we were planning it, there's that closing prayer to form two, communal celebration of penance with individual reconciliation and absolution. There's the closing prayer there that is just, it hits home everything we've been talking about in regard to the season of Lent. Danielle, I see you in. Did you find it?
I do. I think I have the one that you're referring to. Almighty and merciful God, who wonderfully created human nature and still more wonderfully restored it. You do not abandon sinners, but pursue them with a father's love. You sent your Son into the world to destroy sin and death by his passion and restore life and joy to us by the resurrection. You poured the Holy Spirit into our hearts that we might be your children and heirs. You constantly renew us by the sacraments of salvation, that we may be freed from slavery to sin and be transformed more fully day by day into the image of your beloved Son.
See that?
We give you thanks for the wonders of your mercy and praise you with the whole church, singing to you a new song with voice, heart, and deed. To you be glory through Christ and the Holy Spirit. That's a beautiful prayer.
Oh my gosh. That we may be transformed more and more, formed day by day into the image of your Son, that we were first made into through baptism.
Right,
And so this,
exactly.
yes. So this whole
that
season.
That is the purpose of our life, right?
Exactly. And so the whole season and this Sacrament of Penance is meant to restore us to that. We'll pick it up here when we come back from our final break, for our final segment, as we're breaking open the great season of Lent.
Remember your love and your faithfulness, O Lord. Remember your people and have mercy on us, Lord. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom should I fear? The Lord is my life and my refuge. When I call, He hears. Remember your love and your faithfulness, O Lord. Remember your people.
Family Self-Sufficiency Program has assisted thousands of single parents who are working to become more self-sufficient through education and employment opportunities. Our experienced case managers accompany participants for up to 5 years on their journey to identify, address, and break down barriers to improving their quality of life and achieving meaningful goals for themselves and for their families. Professional, compassionate assistance is offered in a safe and trusting environment as participants develop the skills needed to become financially stable and able to support themselves. Every achievement starts with a decision to try. To learn more about Catholic Charities Family Self-Sufficiency Program, call 847-782-4233 or visit CatholicCharities.net.
I feel special. I feel great. I got good grades.
We've seen a huge surge in our kids now meeting or exceeding grade level. Come check us out. You may have never thought we were an option before.
Our school communities provide students with academic excellence and character education in a supportive and stable learning environment. Come see for yourself. Visit archchicago.org/findaschool.
Take these ashes as a sign that from the dust you have been raised, and to dust you shall return. Return to me with all your heart. Let go the world and come to me. Rend your heart and not your clothes, for I am kind, my name is mercy.
Welcome back to this final segment of Focus on the Liturgy. We have spent this hour breaking open the great season of Lent, which begins today with Ash Wednesday. In that last segment before, Danielle and Timothy and I were talking about the Revised Order of Penance that has come out and is available for use as of today. But Danielle and Timothy, there's always an introductory period when there's a revised rite, right? So you can begin using the Revised Order of Penance today, Ash Wednesday. How long does that go? Do you guys, either of you know?
I think it's Pentecost, but correct me if I'm wrong. I just realized in a panic, oh my gosh, I can't remember the mandatory date. Remind
Second
me.
Sunday of Easter.
That's right, because Divine Mercy Sunday, of
Yep,
course.
yep. Well, that's kind of key for our listeners, right? Because many parishes have communal celebrations of the sacrament during Lent, and many seek out the sacrament during Lent as a means of preparing them, like we've been talking, but depending on the scheduling of the parish and such, and the availability of the revised rite, they may hear this Lent the revised translation. Now, if you don't accuse your pastor of doing anything wrong. You can in this interim period, you can use either the new one or the current one that we have. But as of April 16th, I believe. 22nd. The translation that must be used in the celebration of penance will be this revised one that came out, right?
Yes.
And go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to talk about resources. Timothy, you mentioned how whenever there's a change in a ritual translation, it's always a great opportunity for catechesis. They had shown on the screen before the last break a little resource called Preparing for Confession. That's been updated to reflect the new translation with some additions, questions for discussion and reflection. It's a small little book, great for use for adults. It was written by Paul Turner. So that is available from LTP right now. But within the year, this book is currently being adapted for both teens and children.
Oh, that's
children
fantastic.
Who are receiving for the first time or after. So those will be available within the year. We've also published a confession card, so parishes can keep on hand in the confessional, in the reconciliation chapel, or give to people if you're doing catechetical sessions on reconciliation, so that they can refamiliarize themselves with the order
and with the slight
confession.
changes, right? With the and with the slight changes, for example, in the act of contrition, if somebody uses a rote prayer for that, there are slight changes to that prayer, as Danielle, you noted, slight changes to the prayer of absolution, which is the form of the sacrament, so it is important.
That must be done.
Yeah.
One thing, Timothy, you were trying to really ease people's fears with going to confession. There's a lot of flexibility with the Sacrament of Penance, with the ritual itself. So if you have another form of active contrition that you've memorized, don't be afraid. You can still use those prayers.
You can say it from your heart.
Yeah, exactly. It allows you to do spontaneous prayer, what you feel is an act of sorrow. So there's a great deal of flexibility with it, that you don't have to worry that I don't have this prayer memorized. And if parishes want to give that card out to people so that they can be more comfortable with how it takes place, that's a good resource for people to have.
Excellent. It's most certainly. And for other reasons, there are other Lenten resources that our own LTP has. And so our listeners, www.ltp.org, number of resources there. Timothy and Danielle, throughout just this breaking open of Lent, we've raised a couple of times that this is a journey. It is a journey obviously for all of us who are baptized, but it is a terribly important journey for the elect. The people, that's what we call the people who are in the process of preparation for baptism, the RCIA, people who are in the RCIA. And so I would just want to encourage our listeners to tie their journey of Lent to the journey of those who are seeking baptism or seeking full communion with the Catholic Church during this Lent. Timothy, you said that you don't have catechumens. Do you have candidates? Those who are already baptized and seeking? We actually
have a lot of catechumens.
Oh,
they're
you do? I misheard
They're just
you.
not being elected this year. They're still in their discernment process.
Gotcha.
So they will not be celebrating the rite of election this year, as they will continue. But we do have a few candidates, but we at our parish, we receive them when they are ready. So we may or may not have anyone at the vigil. We're still there's still some discerning going on, but most of our folks are received at different points in the course of our year.
Yeah. So I would just encourage the people, pray for these elect, support them, encourage them throughout this season of Lent. This is their last period of preparation. Doubts creep in at this time. Just be mindful of those in your parish who are in this process.
I'm actually going to be the godmother of a teenage boy who is going through the process. He's my best friend's stepson. Her two stepsons are actually both going through the process together. One is 16, the other is 14. So my husband and I are the godparents of the 16-year-old. So I'll be with him at the vigil. So that's really exciting for this year. Todd, do you want to say a few things about the rite of election and when it's taking place this year?
It's actually taking place in the Archdiocese of Chicago this Sunday and next Sunday, so the first and the second Sundays of Lent, and that is the rite, the archdiocesan rite, where those who have been journeying are proclaimed by the bishop to be chosen for initiation this year at this Easter Vigil. And it happens at Holy Name Cathedral. There are 4 celebrations because we have so many parishes and so many, so we do have options. And so just for the listeners again to be praying for these people who will be coming to the cathedral this Sunday and next Sunday and being chosen. The fact that God has chose them is recognized in this rite. And Timothy, you made something, a comment too, and Danielle and Timothy, we all know people who, they're in the habit of going to the Triduum, and they look forward to the baptisms and the receptions. But Timothy, even if St. Thomas the Apostle has no one this year, that is no cause for disappointment in regard to the vigil, right? Oh, we don't have anybody this year. It's going to be such a bummer. No, it isn't, because there still remains the opportunity for you to renew your baptism at that moment in the Easter Vigil or on Easter Sunday morning.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I remember, before I went to grad school, I was never taught either about Lent and the baptismal connection outside of those who were going to be initiated. So as a baptized person, I didn't get that connection. So I remember the first Easter Vigil that I went to without baptism, I was disappointed because I didn't get the greater reality of, this is what it's all about. So regardless if there's no one to be initiated, you still are going to that font to renew it.
Yep.
Yeah, and I would just encourage as well, and Todd, you just to reiterate what you've been saying is, even if you don't have those folks in your community, those around the world who are in this process.
Oh my
keep
goodness,
them
yes.
in your prayer.
Yes.
Like, it's the one liturgy, right? They may not be physically in your space, but they are being initiated that night.
Great point.
Be prayerful and mindful of around the world, not just in the United States, but around the world. This rite is used, and people will be initiated.
That's solidarity right there.
Yeah.
The journey has started, guys, as of today. Timothy and Danielle, happy Lent. Happy Ash Wednesday. Happy Lent to all of our listeners. May everything you do this Lent prepare you to renew your baptism at Easter. We will be back the 4th Wednesday of next month. And so until then,
God bless everyone.
Bye-bye.